In this video, we're going to focus on overhead variances. This comes out of chapter 15. And so we're going to start with exercise 15-27. And we've got information given to us here. The total factory overhead cost incurred is $30,000. The budgeted fixed factory overhead is $7,125. The total standard overhead rate per machine hour, that includes both the fixed and variable, is $4.90, and the standard variable factory overhead per machine hour is $3. Standard manufacturing hours allowed for the number of units incurred was 3,600. So we're going to answer these questions. What is the standard fixed overhead rate per machine hour? So on 15-27, our total overhead rate is $4.90. Our variable overhead rate is $3. So if we subtract that off, we get $1.90 is our fixed overhead rate. That's part one. Part two, it says, what is the denominator activity level that was used to establish the fixed overhead rate? So on two, we simply take the total budgeted overhead, which was given to us at 7,125, and we divide that by the $1.90 that we just calculated up above. And we get 3,750 hours were budgeted for that. Okay, and so then number three, we have three parts to number three. In a two-way analysis of variance, this is found in Exhibit 15-7 down at the bottom of the page. A two-way analysis of variance. Notice that we add the variable and the fixed overhead together to get these totals. And so so what these are, the standard, so we're going to go and plug these numbers in. This is our actual. And we were told in the problem that the total actual overhead was $30,000. Then we're going to do the flexible budget amount. We'll kind of leave a space in here for future use, although we won't use it this problem. So this is our standard flexible budget amount. And remember that the standard flexible budget, we use the overhead that is it's based on. So that's going to be the 3,750. And then we were told we produced 3,600, or the 3,600 hours for the units produced, and that our rate for variable overhead was $3. And so on that one, we get 10,800. Plus, oh, I'm sorry, this should be the budgeted factory overhead. That was the hours. So 7,125. And we get 17,295. And then remember our total application rate was $4.90 times 3,600 units. That's what we were told for that. And so we get is 17,640. And so we compare this to this, and we get oops, I transposed that. I sure did. So we get 30,000. We get 12,075 there. We compare these two. We get 285. So this this is our flexible budget variance. This is our production volume variance, and the total are those two added together. Is 12,360. And then it asks us to verify the production volume variance, this 285, by actually by doing it the way we would do a 4-level volume of variance up here. And so, like when we had the flexible budget versus the other. And so, when we did that, we did the we had the 7,125, and here we have the 190 times 3,600. And we get 6,840 for that. And then we just compare these two, and gives us 285. And the reason that that's true is because this, we got the 3,600 times 3, and the 3 is included here when we did the 3,600. So the difference is the 190 versus the budget amount of 7,125. All right, so that's 1527. And then 1528, we're going to do depreciation. Variances. And so we have a company, their master budget calls for 360,000 of equipment depreciation. The master budget was prepared with an annual volume of 120,000 chargeable hours. This volume is expected to incur uniformly throughout the year. So Clark performs 9,000 chargeable hours and recorded 28,000 of depreciation. Okay, so we do that actual. Here we do the flexible budget in this column. In that column, then we do the applied in this column, right? So the actual was 2,800. The flexible budget would have been 3,000. Okay, because with a flexible budget, anything that is a fixed overhead and depreciation is a fixed cost, with the exception of if you're doing units of production depreciation, it's a fixed cost. And then the amount applied would have been, we need to calculate our rate. Let me come down here, give a little space. We've got 360 hour or $360 in depreciation divided by 120,000 chargeable hours would be $3 a head or $3 an hour. So we had 3 times 9,000 would be 2,700 of applied depreciation. So we compare these two. Remember, you want the one on the right to be bigger. So this is the spending variance is 2,000, and that is favorable. And this is the volume variance, and this is 3,000. Oops, one more zero. Unfavorable. And then we can combine these two together, remembering that the favorable and the unfavorable cancel out, and we get 1,000 unfavorable for that. Okay. Exercise 15-29 includes some journal entries on this. Um, all right. So the Platter Valley factory of Bybee Industries manufactures field boots. The cost of each boot includes direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing factory overhead. The firm traces all direct costs to products and assigns overheads to products based on direct labor hours. The company budgeted 15,000 in variable factory overhead and 2,500 direct labor hours to manufacture 5,000 pairs of boots in March. Okay. So the factory used 2,700 direct labor hours to manufacture 4,800 pairs of boots and spent 15,600 on variable overhead during the month. So the first thing we need to do is to calculate our rate. Okay. And so we budgeted 15,000 and we're going to use 2,500. We're budgeting 2,500 direct labor hours to incur that. And that would be $6 per direct labor hour for overhead. Okay, the factory used 2,700 direct labor hours in March to manufacture 4,800 pairs of boots and spent 15,600 on variable overhead during the month. So now our actual is 15,600. Our standard is going to be 5,000 pairs, no, 48. Yeah, the standard would be 4,800 pairs of boots times our rate. Whoops, we need a rate for how many pairs of boots. So we're budgeting 5,000 pairs. come down here. 5,000 pairs. Oops, I got it upside down. 2,500 hours divided by 5,000 pairs equals 1/2 hour for each pair of boots. So we'll put 0.5 there. And then our rate that we calculated times 6 here. So that's our standard cost. So 4,800 would be 14,400. And then we have our flexible budget based on input. So we have the actual inputs that we used was 2,700 direct labor hours. So this would be 2,700 times this, the 0.5 times the 6, the standard. Oh, no. No, 2,700, not by the half. So 2,700 times 6. Okay, there we go. And we get 16,200. So our spending variance was 600 favorable, and our efficiency variance would be 1,800 unfavorable, and we add these two together and we get 1,200 unfavorable on that. Okay, and then it calls us to write our journal entries on this. And so we're going to have work in process inventory. And that's going to be the standard of 1440. And then we're going to have the spending variance. Sorry, the efficiency variance. Because it's unfavorable, it goes on the left. And then we're going to have the spending variance of 600, and that leaves us with the manufacturing overhead control of 15,600, and that's 16,200, 16,200, and they balance on that. All right. The next one that we're going to do is number 15-30. And that's going to be 15-30. We've got fixed overhead costs, variances, and journal entries. So this is a continuation from the exercise we just did on 29. For March, the Platter Company of Bybee budgeted $90,000 for fixed factory overhead cost. Its practical capacity is 2,500 direct labor hours per month to manufacture 5,000 pairs of boots. The factory used 2,700 direct labor hours in March to manufacture 4,800 pairs of boots. The actual fixed overhead cost incurred for the month was $92,000. Okay, so here we're going to have the actual, and that came in at 92,000. Okay. We're going to have the applied over here. And then we're going to have the standard over here. Okay, so the budgeted is going to be 90,000, and so we've got 90,000. So this is going to be 2,000 unfavorable. Remember, you want the run on the right bigger. So that's unfavorable. And the applied factory overhead is going to be based on the 4,800 pairs of boots. Let's see. So we had the budgeted is 90,000 divided by 5,000 pairs of boots. So we get $18 per pair of boots. We actually made 4,800. So that gives us 86,400 here. So our difference here, this is our volume variance, is 3,600. And again, the one on the right is less. So that is unfavorable. And so all total, we're going to have these together. And since they're the same direction, they add together. So 5,600 unfavorable. Okay. And so we're going to have the standard. We apply overhead at the standard rate. So we're going to have work in process is going to be 90,000. And these are both unfavorable. So we're both of these are going to be the actual cost was 92. And so we've got unfavorable goes on the credit side. So we've got the spending variance, 2,000. And we've got the applied variance, the efficiency, or no, volume variance, excuse me, 3,600. And then we've got the manufacturing overhead control. But work in process came in at 9. Manufacturing overhead control would be 86,400. Nope, this should have been 92. The actual amount. All right. There we go. Okay, and our last one is number 33. We got two-way, three-way, and four-way analysis of variance. We've got a practical capacity of 40,000 units. Standard machine hours per unit is 2. Variable factory overhead is $3, and the budgeted fixed factory overhead is 3,600. The department uses machine hours to apply factory overhead in production in 2022. The department used 85,000 machine hours and incurred 625,000 in total manufacturing overhead costs to manufacture 4,200 units. Actual overhead for the year was 375,000. The fixed, variable, and total application rates for machine hours round all your answers to 2 decimal places. All right. So the first thing that we know is the budgeted fixed factory overhead is 360,000, and that we have a practical capacity of 40,000 units and $2 per machine hour. So 40 or 2 machine hours times 2. So that would be 80,000. So we get $4.50 is the fixed. The variable, standard variable factory overhead is $3 per machine hour. That's just given to us. And so our total is $7.50 total application rate. Okay. Okay, then number 2, part 2, asks us the total flexible budget to the nearest whole dollar for factory overhead cost based on output achieved in 2022. So the flexible budget will be the rate of $3 per machine hour for the variable times the 2 machine hours per unit times 4,200 units, 42,000 units. Is 252,000. That would be the variable overhead. Remember, standard overhead in a flexible budget is just what the budget amount was, so 360,000. So we get 612,000 total overhead. Okay, so that's part 2. Create the production volume variance to the nearest whole dollar. State whether this variance was favorable or unfavorable. Okay. So our production volume variance is going to be based on this is our flexible budget, right? So we got 252 and 360. This is going to be the same 252, but now we're going to use this 450. So 3 times 2. Well, let's do it in total. 4,200,000 times 750 would be times 2 machine hours is 630,000. And so we have 18,000 favorable because we did produce more, right? Our capacity was 40,000. Everything was based on we produced 42,000. So that answer makes sense on that. Okay. And then we want the total overhead spending variance to the nearest whole dollar. So we had 625,000 was our total amount. And then, so this in between the spending variance is based upon inputs, right? And so the fixed cost is going to be the same, the 360 here, but now we used 85,000 machine hours times our rate of $3 would be 255,000 would be 615,000. And so our spending variance was 10,000 unfavorable on that one. Total overhead spending variance. Then we want the overhead efficiency variance to the nearest whole dollar. Well, this is our flexible budget right here, so that's 612. And so that's going to be 3,000 unfavorable. That's all that is. And then finally, we want the variable overhead spending variance and the fixed overhead spending variance each to the. So now we're going to break this out. Actual fixed overhead cost was 375. The budgeted was 360. So we had 15,000 unfavorable for the fixed. And the reason I did the that first is because we have the total was 625. So 625 minus 375 means that our variable overhead spending was 250,000, and we went ahead and calculated here was 255,000. And so that's 5,000 favorable, which makes sense because we have 10,000 total difference here, 5 and 15. Remember, the different directions cancel those out. And so that's it's the same number on that. All right. So that's pretty much what you're going to see on the overhead variances. I don't think you'll see much in terms of journal entries on the exam. We're just going to look at variances mostly, and mostly be able to just do the four that we just did in this last problem. That'll be that. Okay, good luck.